Okay, so members, you're welcome on the call, and thank you so much for creating time for our evening discussion. This is part of the African Center for Career Mentorship webinar series. We normally have them every Tuesdays from 7 to 8 p.m. at such a peak hour. The interest is to prepare prospective graduate students for their applications, more so for international applications, but also for local applications. That's fine. So we will have more of these sessions. The next one is going to be there on 19th, and we'll have others on 26th and so forth. And very soon I will be inviting more people to join us to also give guest presentations. We have a guest on 26th of September. We also have a guest on 7th of October as we go along. Okay, so today we are going to chat about a very interesting area that sometimes in applications, they ask for it, but sometimes they don't ask for it. So this favors those where they normally ask for it. I just want to emphasize that in most of the US universities and UK universities, most of you're targeting a PhD, they normally ask for it. It may not be very direct that we want a research proposal, a research concept. They can be polite by saying, share with us a sample of yeah, so let's keep ourselves muted such that we can follow the conversation. But I was saying that these concept notes, sometimes they ask for them directly, and sometimes they may hide and they say just share with us a sample of any written document by yourself. And so for me, I'm going to share with you some of the things I think would work, but also I'm going to take you through a practical session on how to search for information and then how to put it together. And so much of it today is going to be practical, I want to say. I will invite you to get to your laptop if you're using your phone, because I will be requesting you to write something on your side. Okay, so like I've said that concepts, if I'm just to begin, a concept is what you want to work on. And so the first interesting thing is that you need to have defined where exactly you want to go or what you want to work on for your PhD or your master's or postdoctorate. So in other words, you need to first of all define where you want to go. And in our previous session for last week, we took time to dive into that area. And so you're welcome to follow and go to our YouTube channel, which is the African Center for Career Mentorship, to go and listen to what we talked about in terms of defining where you want to go, but also defining what you want to work on. Actually, for me, I find that if you can decide and choose what you want to work on, you are far better, and you are in a better position to decide which supervisor to support you or to advise you, but also which department to register in. So in other words, you need to take time to define what you want to work on. This morning, I was interacting with a colleague who is aspiring to do his PhD. And when we are talking, he hadn't clearly defined what he wants to work on, but he was struggling to choose a supervisor. So I first took him behind, and we first of all agreed on what he wants to work on. That's number one. The second thing that we agreed with him is what exact skills he wants to learn through his PhD and through his, or for this case, a master's program. What exact skills do you want to learn? Do you want to learn drug discovery, for example? Do you want to learn computer data science, and maybe computer engineering? What exactly you want to learn? If you're very clear on what you want to learn, it is easier to know which supervisor is good in that field. And once you know which supervisor is good in that field, you are now able to know which supervisor can take you on. So let's just dive into this conversation for today. So just to begin with, I just picked up this current call, which is flying everywhere. I think I have found it in around over 30 platforms, and so it's flying almost everywhere. And I said, okay, I'm going to use it for my illustration. Now, this is a PhD scholarship, if I want to use the word scholarship. And it is for 4 years. Now, they have made it very clear on one page, the person they are looking for, and they've put in bold what they are looking for. But interestingly, what captured my attention was how to apply. Number one is one-page CV. Now, one-page CV, most people struggle with it. But my mentor, Dr. Danny Musinguzi, who is on the call, if you can just check on the list of participants, because his user is Danny Musinguzi, he can help you and design a one-page CV. And so that shouldn't be a very big problem, including 2 names of 2 referees. That's not a big issue. So number one, okay, the bullet number 2 is one-page description of your proposed project. And for me, that's what I want us to talk about today. The entire 1 hour we shall be discussing that one-page description of your proposed work. So that requirement number 2 on how to apply is why we are here this evening. Now, even when they are asking for one page the way you see it, and of course, like I've said, it may not be straightforward, but it may be straightforward like here. Here it is very straightforward. But in the other place, they can say any sample or any idea you want to work on. Now, the approach to this one-page description of your proposed project, the first thing to do is to get this email address here, and you put it in Google, such that you get to understand this person better. But even if you don't put the whole email address and you just copy the word Leith and Jacob, you are able to know this person here who is going to be your supervisor. This person has areas he or she is working on. Now, before you begin writing the one-page concept, the first thing to do is read about this person. Which area is he or she working in? Because that is how you try to now see whether your interests align with his interests. The second thing to do, when you read about him, you try to understand, when you read on his bio, you'll be able to see the areas he has published in. You'll even see the students that he's supervising right now. You'll even see the projects that he's currently working on. It is very possible that you'll find this malaria modeling project, one of the projects there. So you read about that project, for example, even if it's only having a 100-page description of what that project is all about. That gives you a hint on how to structure your application. That helps you to understand the objectives that projects is aiming to achieve. Now, that information is not put here. And so you need to think outside the box. Don't rush to describe your idea. You try to understand what this guy is working on. You try to understand which project you're going to be working on. And if that project is not listed on his short bio, maybe it could be a grant which he's expecting it to go through. Maybe it could be a grant which has gone through and they haven't published on the website. That is no problem. So what happens is that what happens in such, what happens in such a situation is that you go to his recent publications. If you can read around 3 or 4 of his publications, you will be able to understand the question he's trying to answer with his PhD or master's students. And you're able to see which areas you can contribute to. The purpose of taking time to do some background checks, it helps you to see whether he's the best fit for you or he's not a good fit for you. So in other words, don't just be moved by the word mathematical modeling for malaria control. There should be beyond, there's a lot of modeling beyond that. So let me try to dive deeper into a small, on how to write a concept note for either PhD and MSc. I want to emphasize that in most cases, it is the PhD where they ask for this short concept notes. Masters hardly do they. But I'm also cognizant there are people who want to apply from bachelor's to PhD straight. So I'll just share in a general sense in that perspective. Now, one thing I want to first of all tell you that this small concept paper, which I'm talking about, will always be 1 page and a maximum of 2 pages. So that literally means that there is a lot of information to be compressed, a lot of information to be compressed. And because a lot of information is going to be compressed, you need to learn how to write a concise concept of 2 pages. Now that takes time for you to get there. And so today is 12th of September 2023. The deadline for that specific application, let me just go back to it. The deadline is the 16th of October. That is close to a full month from now. My very big advice is that don't submit your application maybe by 16th of September, or maybe by 17th of September, maybe by 20th of September. In other words, you need to write that small concept down, and after writing it, you need to get somebody to help you read through it. You need to get somebody to help you, to give you feedback on how that concept is reading through. So in other words, you need to prepare before you contact the supervisor. That's the point I'm trying to make. But we don't need to delay, because it seems he only has 1 opening in this particular call. He seems to be having only 1 opening, because he says fully funded 4-year PhD studentship, meaning it's only 1. So we don't need to take a lot of time, because as we take a lot of time, maybe he will see somebody he's interested in working with, and he may stop accepting more applications. But let me just tell you some of the things when I was trying to read through some of the things that quickly came when I was trying to prepare for these slides on what we should have in this small 1 or 2 page concept note. Number 1, they are devising that we need to define the title and the purpose of the study. We'll get to it shortly. You need to describe a small background and the scope of your work. But very interesting, and which for me I want to emphasize strongly, is that you need to identify the research, the problem that you want to address. Now, at a master's level, at MPhil level, the problem is emphasized. Yes, I will say we need to pursue the actual problem we want to solve. But for the PhD, it is over and over emphasized. So at a PhD level, we need to be very clear. We must have a novel area that we want to make a contribution to, and I'll get to it shortly. We need to list the goals and objectives. We need to formulate the research questions, and we need to explain the theoretical framework or the conceptual framework or the framework that we want to use for our work, and a small bit of literature review. Now, remember, we are writing all this within one page or 2 pages. One thing I want to emphasize is this small concept note. This supervisor is not looking for your expertise per se, but he or she is looking at your writing style. Is also looking at whether you are able to do literature search. In other words, do you know how to cite? Do you know how to use online referencing softwares? He's wondering, are you able to critically appraise and analyze the literature? And you say, okay, this was studied by so and so, they found out this, but they recommended this for future work. Are you able to analyze and come out with a gap in the too much information which is available? That's what he's trying to see in you, because he knows that if he or she knows that if I can get a student who can do literature search, or who can write a problem statement, or who knows how to write a problem statement, or who knows the problem they are going to research on, that's a great, it's almost 50% into the program, because in the UK, most of the masters or the MPhil programs are for 1 year or 9 months. So you need to be very clear on what you want to work on. But let me try to go a bit of dive into what we need to have in the background. Now, I was picking this information from the UG scholarships resources, which were shared on the WhatsApp groups this afternoon. And so I highly recommend you to go to those pages and then see a lot of information on the TOEFL, on the CV and everything. So I just said I will not invent the wheel. Let me just use the available information for us to have a conversation this evening. So the background or the introduction, we are saying, provides a description of the basic facts and the importance of the research that you want to work on. And within the background, you try to mention what research area do you want to work on? Do you want to work on, maybe, let me use an example of maybe alcohol consumption among pregnant women? Is that what you want to research on? That can be your research area. And then in that small background or introduction, you try to show why you're motivated to do this work. In other words, for example, is there a need? Why can't we wait until 5 years from now? Why should we do it now? Are we saying that there is a very big problem with alcohol consumption? Are we saying there is a lot of maybe road traffic crashes, and they are attributed to alcohol consumption, and you think that it should be studied now because we have so many road traffic crashes? Are you saying there are so many women who are giving birth to underweight children, and you're attributing it to alcohol consumption among pregnant women? So in other words, you need to try to articulate why you think we need to study that right now and not tomorrow. Yeah, I'm getting interrupted by people who don't mute, but please mute such that we can continue the conversation. So we are saying, what is the motivation for your research? And so the last point under background, I'm saying, how important is it for knowledge advancement or practice? In other words, is it really important for us to do that work now? And I know by the time you choose it, there must be something important. So in the background, try to articulate that. Now, for me, I want us to put much emphasis on the problem statement that you want to address. So when somebody says, what exactly do you want to study? I can say, I want to study alcohol consumption among pregnant women. I am very clear. Then I'll say, but how is it a problem? I'll say, yeah, it's a problem. And then somebody will say, how big is the problem? So I must provide a clear and a concise description of the issues that need to be addressed as far as alcohol consumption among pregnant women is concerned. So I need to be very clear. At this stage, I should be very, very clear. I was talking to my student I'm supervising for her research at Makerere University. And I was telling her that what is the problem that you want to solve in Mengo Hospital? What is it? You mention it. Because there is a reason why you've chosen Mengo Hospital. Something must have persuaded you to go and study this particular thing at Mengo Hospital. So what is the problem in Mengo Hospital? So you mention it. And so this the resources I found on our scholarship was saying, what is the specific problem in that research area that you will address? E.g., lack of understanding of this particular area, or there is low performance in a particular area. So in other words, we must be very clear. Actually, you need to take time to clearly know what's the problem that you want to solve. For example, are you saying that that most people in Kampala don't put on seat belts as they are driving? If that's what you're saying, then that is the issue. So how big is the problem? Maybe we shall say maybe every 7 out of 10 drivers don't use seat belts. And so that's how big the problem is. 7 out of 8 don't use seat belts. That's how big the problem is. So when somebody asks you that, is there a problem? You say, yeah, there's a problem. And then they say, how big is the problem? You say, okay, 100% or 90% of women are giving birth to underweight children. So that for me, that's a very big problem in Uganda. It is not sustainable. So for me, I want you to take, right now, just take 1 minute to write down that one problem that you think you want to solve through your master's work or through your PhD work that you're proposing to do. What exactly do you want to solve? You just take a minute to write down the research problem that you want to solve. Are you saying that Kampala is a very polluted city? Yes, that is the problem. If Kampala is the highly polluted city in the whole of Africa, or in African cities, that is the problem and should concern us. Are you saying in every 10 women who are giving birth in Mulago Hospital, 8 of them, the children are underweight? Yes, that is a problem. And we must look for the solution. Are you saying that there is a growing rise in commercial sex workers in Mukono? Yes, that could be a concern. That could be a problem for us to go and investigate why. Okay, so let's continue with the conversation as far as this is concerned. In writing this concept note, they also advise that we need to have research objectives. So the objectives provide a list of goals that will be achieved through your proposed work. So in other words, what do you want to research on? And I added on a comment that these objectives should be specific, they should be measurable, they should be attainable, and they should be realistic, and they should be time bound. When do you want to achieve them? Is it by December 2024? Do you want to achieve them by June 2024? That's the time boundedness that you want to say, I want to go and do this, I want to go and assess this, and I should achieve it by this time. All this should be within the 2-page write-up of the concept, on the concept notes. Now, this is where I want you to interact. I want us to interact even more. So most of the PhD applicants, you need to have a very quick a quick review of the available information around that area that you are going to research. A very, very quick, in other words, not be so detailed because you don't have the time. Okay, you don't have the space anyway. So, but you need to show the supervisor that you've reviewed some 3 or 4 papers in this particular topic or this particular area that you are going for. Now, this is how you can review it. And I was guided by one of the lecturers at Makerere University called Professor Spire Sentongo. So what he guides is that literature review is a conversation. He guides a literature review is a conversation, and therefore, as you are reading other people's work, you should be able to begin interacting with it and conversing with it. And so he guides like what you do when you're reading a particular paper on that particular area. So you get a notebook. And as you're going through this content or this paper, you try to ask yourself questions about what they have written. For example, their sample size, their conclusions, how did they measure this? How big was their study area? How did they select the study participants? Should we trust their analysis? Couldn't they go deeper into analyzing their work than where they ended? They collected data maybe using papers. Couldn't they have used online tools like maybe Kobo Collect, maybe Monkey Survey? So you ask those questions as you're reading this paper. And when you ask those questions, you keep writing them down. So when you are writing or when you're analyzing the literature review, you interact further and you say, okay, a study by so-and-so found out this. This is what they recommended. But in my opinion, they didn't talk about this. They didn't talk about this. Or they measured using this. But I think if they had measured using this, we would have got better results. So you are interacting with these published papers. And by the way, supervisors are looking out for that kind of interaction. Again, this is very much important for PhD applicants because these supervisors are looking for somebody who can be able to critique available evidence. Try to look at the strength of this work. Try to look at the areas that they were not able to do. Good enough, in most published papers in the discussion section, they normally give the strength of their work and the limitations of their work. Those limitations are an opportunity for you to design work to address those limitations. They also sometimes point out areas for future research. So in other words, you can take on those areas for future research as an area for you to focus on. And I'm going to show you how we can interact more in that work. But in this literature review, they say provide a summary of previous related research on the research problem. Actually, don't send this supervisor or the application panel or the admissions team any work that you have not referenced something that has been done by other people. By the way, for you to be very tactical enough, if you can, and if that supervisor whom you want to work with has done work in that line, please reference their work. Be intentional, read their papers, which they have done. For example, if you want to go and be supervised by Professor Adoke Iyeka. Professor Adoke Iyeka is a professor at Makerere University College of Health Sciences, and he has done a lot of work in malaria. Now, if you want him to supervise you for your PhD in malaria, if you want to capture his attention well, you cite his papers. He has been into this industry for the last close to 20 years. So he has done a lot of work in malaria. Now, when you cite his paper, when you appreciate what they have done, he will say that actually you've taken time to appreciate their efforts and their hard work. So try to interact with what is currently known and what's currently available. So number two, the previous studies, try to look at the strengths and the weaknesses and the justification for your research. In other words, as you are reading these previous studies, in the interaction, you try to say, actually, so and so did this, they found out this, they recommended this for future work, and for me, I am taking on this for future work. I think that when I take on this, I will have added on a body of knowledge. I will have contributed to solving the problem. I will have caused clarity in something that was not clear. I will have contributed to solving this big problem, which authors so and so recommend that there should be some work to be done in this line. Now, this conversation, again, I want to emphasize, is more to the PhD applicants. In other words, for PhD level, you need to look at what other people have done in that line and distinctly mention what you're adding on in terms of methodology, in terms of in the new measurement, in the new tools or the new areas that some people haven't gone to. But the most interesting thing is to look at areas for future research, areas which they have said for future research. It's where you begin from. More so for the masters or the MPhil students, it's good for you to pick on the areas for future research. For example, if you read the paper and you see they are recommending that future work should be done in this line, and they are giving 3 areas or 2 areas, pick on those ones, and those can be the objectives for your master's work. At a master's level, you can now write around that and you'll proceed forward. But for PhD level, you need to interact with more papers and critique what more than around 5 people have done for you to come up with around 2 or 3 objectives. So in this preliminary literature review, they say, please point out what is known, point out what has been done by others, and try to show why yours is still necessary. Like I told you, for example, you can say, although authors so and so have found out this, they have also measured this, but their study was only in Western Uganda. They did not take, they haven't, okay, no one else has measured the similar work, but maybe in Eastern Uganda or in Eastern DRC. But because of the cultural differences between Western Uganda and Eastern Uganda, I think it is prudent to measure how things are done in the Eastern Uganda, given the cultural issues, given the tribal aspects, given the weather patterns, given the rain patterns, and then we can have a conclusive picture on this particular topic in this area. So in other words, you try to show why yours is still important. And why I've taken a lot of time in this particular area for literature review is because this is the center for you to identify what to write on. The problem is not what to write on. The problem is what, the problem is not how to write, no. The problem is what are you going to write on? And how are you going to put it together? That's where the biggest issue is. And remember, you're writing in 2 pages. Okay, so about methodology, in the resources, the document was guiding that for the methodology should be able to define the research methods and the logic steps. Now, for PhD level, I want to suggest that when you're writing your methodology, you write per objective. Don't write generally. Even if you're writing only 2 lines or 1 line, but try to go per objective. Remember, for the PhD, you may have around 4 objectives. So what you say for objective 1, I'll do A, B, C, D. I will collect data from here. I'll analyze it like this. I'll test it like this. I will conclude that this is working or not working when I see this. That's objective 1. For objective number 2, I am going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I will say I've answered it when I have measured like this. Then you go to objective number 3. Even if it's only 2 lines or 1 line, but try to go per objective. Don't lump them together. So we're going to say what to do and how to solve the problem, and how will you be able to achieve the proposed objectives. Which methods will you use? Will you be able to do the survey? Will you be able to model? Will you be able to pilot? Will you be able to observe? You need to mention what you intend to use. And this is very important for the supervisor, for them to see that actually you have thought through how you are going to answer your PhD objectives. In the resources that I found, they recommended that we need to attach the schedule of what a schedule, in other words, a Gantt chart, within the 3 months, or okay, within the 3 years or the 4 years of the PhD. When do you want to do what? But this only happens if at all the space allows, or even when they have mentioned. Sometimes they may not mention. Now, there's something I want to emphasize more so for PhD concept notes. Like I said earlier, please don't send your concept notes without at least references. Even if for master's work, I told you for masters, you can even just read one paper and find areas for future research, and you focus on those areas, and you'll be able to progress with your work. But that's for master's concept notes. But for a PhD, at least interact with around 5 papers or 6 papers for you to be able to identify the 4 objectives. And very strongly, I encourage you to use referencing managers like EndNote, like Zotero, like Mendeley. These supervisors will be very much impressed when they get to understand that you are able to use the online softwares and online citations. So that is just a very brief presentation about identifying and coming up with a concept note. I just want to show you. Okay, I want to show you how we can navigate this in just 1 minute. Yeah, so when I was preparing for this session, I was just Googling something about balanced diet among caregivers in Uganda. So let me just begin from 0, because some people may not be familiar with where I am now. So this is the Chrome which all of you could be conversant with. And so I go to Google Scholar. You can either use Google Scholar or PubMed or Web of Sciences or Scopus. But I mostly use Google Scholar as the beginning point before I go to PubMed. So when I go to Google, I put the word Google Scholar. And so I click on the word Google Scholar there, and it will be able to bring for me an icon to type in. I can type in something. I can even say alcoholism among pregnant women, among pregnant women. Yeah, I can just type in that, and then I can select, I can customize the range which I want my studies to come through. I can say, okay, I want studies which are recent. I can say from 2021 up to 2023, and I can be able to say search. Now, when I click search, papers begin coming through, but I can even be stubborn and I say, you know what? I want papers of 2023 because I want very recent information. I I can try to screen further and I say in Uganda, for example. So I'll get a lot of papers which have been published about alcoholism and about pregnancies. So I can just click on this one here. So I can, this is just one paper. Sorry, it's loading. My library is is disturbing me. Let me try another paper. Okay, so I can interact and read this entire paper. And as I read this entire paper, I'm trying to interact with this paper as I go along. And you proceed reading it. But like I told you, there's a lot that normally is always covered in the methodology on how these people did their work. When the way they describe their methodology is where you pick areas that they could have not done well, or that areas that need to be improved. And then you go to the discussion. Discussion is where they normally point out the strength of their work, but also the weaknesses for their work. They'll be able to say, you know, we were not able to do ABCD, we're not able to do ABCD. I just want to point out the limit. You can see this paper. Towards the end, they were able to point out the limitations of their work. Now, when you're reading these papers and you find limitations of their work, that's where you put your attention and you ask yourself, can I make a contribution to these limitations? Can I address these limitations? Sometimes in the conclusions, they make conclusions, but also they can make a comment on where future work needs to be done. For example, you can look at this study here. It says that illicit drug and high-risk alcohol use were prevalent among adolescents from urban slums in Kampala. Male adolescents and those who reported vulnerabilities like IPV, multiple sexual partnerships, and sex workers have a high prevalence of substance use. Comprehensive intervention that reduce. So in other words, this is what these guys are recommending. So even when you are writing in your literature review, you say so and so did this, they found out this, they recommended this. And so my work is going to advance A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. Now this can be one paper. You go and read another paper. So for a PhD, if you can read around 6 to 10 papers, you will be able to come up with around a 2-page write-up or narrative of what you want to work on. But the most driving thing is you choosing what you want to work on. So I just wanted to show you where you can find areas to focus your concept note on, but also I wanted to interact with you more on the aspect of literature review and how to write it in a very succinct and concise way, where you try to appreciate what other people have done, but also where you're able to identify the areas they have not done that you're coming to make a contribution to. And so I want to thank you so much for listening. I want to leave the remaining minutes for us to have questions such that we can respond to them. I saw a question in the chat. I think it was Barbara. Barbara asked, what is, okay, somebody says, yeah, Barbara, the challenge has been your network, because I've been admitting you in and out. I think the problem is network. Sorry about that. Okay, Innocent was able to quickly read about this supervisor here, Leif, and he is able to understand what this person is working on. Now, once you know what somebody is working on, it is easier for you to now know which areas he's interested in as far as his research is concerned. And you will be comfortable to craft your application well, other than you just writing or responding in a general format. Yeah, so thank you so much, Innocent. Okay, so colleagues, you can just raise up your hand and ask something, and then we can interact. Yes, Jennifer Akelo, you're welcome. Jennifer, kindly unmute and ask or comment. You can also use the chat, no problem. I should be able to see the questions and comments. So the point I'm trying to also emphasize is that do not sit, you do not begin responding to a concept note without you doing some reading in that particular area, but also to somebody whom you want to go and work with. Now, some of those things are not spoken. Some of those things are not spoken. So you need to be intentional. You need to be intentional and do background checks and background strategizing before you put out a concept note or before you upload a concept note. Jennifer, do you have a question, or your network is not stable? You can unmute, Jennifer. Okay, Innocent says, thank you for the wonderful presentation. You're welcome, Innocent. The big takeaway is never begin on a concept note without reading. And when you've read something, please make it in the references, in the concept that you're coming to, you're putting up together. So Sandy asks, how long should a PhD problem statement be? Again, I would say it is work. It keeps building with time. So it's work in progress. If they are asking for 1-page concept note, then the problem statement should be very small, maybe a quarter of that. But of course, as you keep building a concept, project proposal, and full dissertation later on, or full thesis later on, the problem statement grows with time. I remember at the time I began writing my concept, my PhD concept, the problem I think was 1 line, and it kept growing, and it's still growing. Right now I have a problem statement of 2.5 pages, and I'm saying it's still growing because it is work in progress. Yeah, so Sunday, it keeps growing with time. But let me tell you what one of the professors in Makerere says, called Professor Eli Lutevemberwa. He said that if you can't tell me the problem you want to go and solve within one sentence, then you don't know what you're talking about. Can you imagine? He said, and I repeat, and I quote him, that if you can't tell me the problem you're going to solve within one sentence, then you don't know what you're talking about. You're just gambling. So, Sunday, it is important to make the problem very clear that my problem is the growing or the high pollution in Kampala City. That's my problem. I can also say high road crashes on Ugandan roads is my problem that I want to solve. Continued rejection of our foodstuffs on the Kenya or South Sudan border. When they reject our maize because of quality or because of aflatoxins, for me, that's my biggest problem. And I want to solve it. Okay, so I just wanted to make a comment on that, Sandy, and thanks for asking. Then Noel says, thank you, doctor. What's the maximum number of pages for a concept paper, if not specified in the application? If they don't specify in the application, and if they don't have any limitation on the number of words as well, then that's like an open check for you. I could go for around 5 pages. I could go for around 5 pages if they have given me an open check. And sometimes they can just say, you upload something, that anything that you have ever written by yourself. That's an opportunity for you to write a concept note of what you're planning to work on. Even when they haven't told you, it's an opportunity for you to sell and market to them what you are thinking about, what you're thinking of doing for your master's or your PhD. Noel, for me, if it's open check, I would go for around 5 pages, and I would make sure that I cover, let me just share this slide again. I would make sure that within those 5 pages, within the 5 pages, I have covered these areas very well. I have put the title, I have put the background, I've put the problem, I've put the goals, I've put the research questions, I've put a small conceptual framework, but I would have around, within the 5 pages, I'll have a full page on literature review, where I'm interacting with what other people have done in that particular line. And I would make sure the last paragraph is full of literature, is full of citations or references. I would make sure there is full of references in that respect. Yeah, that's just it. So thanks for asking, Noel. So Innocent says, maybe a little addition. Often, what international institutions consider as a page is a number of, let me get it, is a number of words, which is about 250 to 275, but depends on the application call. That's true. That's true. And thank you so much for mentioning that, Innocent. Jennifer says, thank you, doctor, for sparing your time to take us through this process. I hope to keep learning from these sessions. Have a blessed evening. Okay, that's great. That's great. And all the best as you keep writing and thinking about what you want to work on. Okay, so I want to invite my colleague, Dan, to say something. Emma, please go ahead to make your inquiry.
Yes, thank you very much, Abel, and a very good evening. My question is on if, for example, I'm targeting on pursuing a master's, maybe in drug discovery, and I want to dig deep onto the problem of maybe the variation or the resistance of a drug. Let's say malaria. If it's malaria, the variation or the resistance of maybe like coartem and maybe lumatem, that I want to study the two variables. I want you to help me with that example to help me digest and how to develop a problem statement.
Okay.
The title, the problem
Yeah.
statement.
Actually, the biggest issue, if you've had me, Emmanuel, I've not so much emphasized on the title, because the title keeps changing from time to time. So don't even take a lot of time making the title smart and nice. No, don't mind about that. Now, what you've just described right now, you need to go and read about that drug discovery, for example, on those 2 drugs. And you'll see whether maybe there is increasing resistance in maybe particular species, either in humans or in animals. And then for you, that will be the problem. Now, from those other studies, you will say, how big is it? Those maybe if they did maybe in Kabale, or they did in Mbarara, or they did in Gulu, they will clearly show where how big the problem was. It may be, and for you, when you're writing the problem statement, you say studied by so and so, found out that there is growing resistance in this, but also the literature available from Pharmaceutical Society in Uganda is also showing this. National Drug Authority is also showing that there's a problem with this, and therefore I want to contribute in this line. But if you read in that area, you'll identify more gaps, but also if you read more papers, you'll be able to identify the actual gap. Is it in humans, is it in animals? And then you can try to dive deeper into it. Yeah. Innocent Tayebwa. Innocent Tayebwa. Okay, as Innocent is coming through, I can read Doreen's comment. Thank you for the guidance, Doctor. Forever grateful. Some universities asked for 2 concept notes. I was shocked last year during my Oxford application. It is key to read the instructions. I agree. I agree. And then Drake says, thank you for the session. Does the list of references contribute to the word count? In most cases, you can be political enough and you can be tactical enough by saying appendix. In other words, when you say appendix, that's the skill that Dr. Dan taught me, that when you say appendix, you're saying that the main document is here, but if you have time and if you're interested, you can see what's in the appendix as well. So those references you can make, if you see the word limits or the words shooting, you can call them appendix. In so doing, they don't contribute the main document. If you say appendix, they don't contribute the main document, but again, they will be strengthening your concept notes. Yeah, just that's a comment I can make on that. Okay, so just because of time, let me invite Noel. You have an inquiry, go ahead.
Thank you, Doctor. I don't know if I'm still on, but I just want to ask, like, where you say if you're given like an open check, yeah, to write, to upload anything you've written about and you want to write like a concept note, how would you choose a research topic that is catchy? Like, what would you base on to, because I know there are many issues around, but like, what criteria would you use to pick a good research topic?
Okay, yeah. That makes a lot of sense, and thanks for that inquiry. I just want to request that you refer to our last week's session. Last week we had a session on discovering your potential, but also coming up with career projection or career forecasting, I will say. So I request that you go to our YouTube and watch the 5th of September's session. It will help you to narrow down on what you want to work on. It will be very resourceful to you, Noel. Yeah. Okay. So thanks. Let me see if Dr. Dan is still on the call. I think we don't have Dr. Dan. We don't have Dr. Dan, but colleagues, I am available, and we are happy to continue supporting you. And I know conceptualizing takes time. Me, I know that very well. I know that it takes time. So if today I was encouraging the PhD colleague at Makerere University, I told him if it's taking you time to conceptualize, don't get angry. Don't take angry. Conceptualizing takes time. And so you need to take time to read around and put together pieces and try to define what the problem you want to solve is. And then once you're clear on what you want to solve, you'll hit the ground running. So we are available, and please, you're welcome to contact us, and we will support you as you navigate the journey. And so we are 3 minutes on top of the hour, and we shall stop here and see you again next Tuesday, the same time. And that will be on 19th of September. Bye-bye for now.